So I got asked this question, which is why, as a scholar, especially a scholar of Japanese, I don't like using the word unique. So this is not the usual content I make, but I thought I'd kind of go into it. I'm going to try to explain myself and hopefully in doing so convince you of my opinion, because I do believe that this will help you as a writer, especially if you're writing like school essays. I think this stuff is things teachers look for, and definitely if you're writing research papers, etc. So the context here is that this comes from my video on Japanese pronouns, where I got a comment saying, yeah, pronouns are very interesting. It's a unique feature of the Japanese language. And I said, I agree, but I don't like the word unique. And then I was asked to explain myself. And there are 4 reasons why I kind of avoid this word whenever possible as an academic. In casual speech, fine. Like when you're just talking to your friends, when you're just talking normally, no problem with it whatsoever. It's fine. I think it's a nice emphasizer. Like, oh, that's so unique. That's wonderful. It's great. But in my professional life, I do avoid the word basically all the time, and there are 2 reasons that are generic and 2 reasons that specifically relate to my job as a scholar of Japanese. So the generic ones, number 1, I just don't think it's a very, very useful adjective. I think in most cases it's redundant. So for instance, you are a unique individual. I know people do the unique snowflake thing, but it's true. You are a unique snowflake. Like every single person is different. But that's kind of inherent to the word individual. I don't need to say unique individual because until we master cloning, there's no such thing I'm aware of as a non-unique individual. It's a redundant term, like a clenched fist. You don't need it. So why add it? Most of the time that I use unique, it's in, again, casual speech when I'm trying to emphasize something. Like, I love this because it's a unique picture that, someone made for me. Like when someone hand makes you a present, you say, oh, I really value this because it's so unique. But again, if it's handmade, it is unique. I don't need to say a unique handmade item. If it's handmade, it's unique. When writing for academia, we have to have that specificity, so we don't add adjectives, etc. if they don't add information, therefore I avoid it. The second reason I avoid it generically is that, are you sure it's unique? That's the kind of question that you have to ask. A lot of times we see something and we have never seen anything like it, but that might just be that we don't know. And as someone that has done their best to educate themselves about as many languages as they can outside of just Japanese, I still don't know everything about every language. So if I say this is unique, it's setting myself up for failure because it's a very, very easy way for a reviewer to think that I'm doing things wrong or that I need to read more. It's sort of like weakening your whole argument. Like you build a house and then you lift it up and put these very, very fragile stilts below it saying that this is unique. And then if anyone reviews it and says, actually, it's not unique, I know about this thing, they've cut out your argument and the entire thing can collapse. For me, any benefits that unique can be, like the claim that, ooh, this is unique, therefore it's good data, therefore you should publish it, are really low. You don't need to big up your study. It's not advertising. Your inherent value of your study is present elsewhere in the paper. So giving that opportunity for people to say, aha, gotcha, you're wrong, is not one that I like to do, and therefore I avoid it. Moving into the Japanese context then, there are specific uses of unique in relation to the Japanese language, Japanese culture, etc. that really bother me and I really want to avoid and not associate myself with. The first comes from dialogues that I consider to be ignorant at best and often racist, coming especially from the West, that fail to treat Japan as a real place occupied by human beings and situate them as people that we have nothing to do with and can't relate to at all. It's a very Orientalism is a term that's used for this kind of perspective. There's a definite history, and I'm sure you've seen these, of people saying like, oh, the unique untranslatable words in the Japanese language, or, oh, this unique feature of Japanese culture. And a lot of times these are presented not only with ignorance of like how language works, but inability to treat Japanese people as individuals, and oftentimes just a way to use Japan to try to make a point without actually caring about Japan at all. You can see this manifest, for instance, in very racist dialogues where people go to Japan, point a camera at the clean spots where there's a lot of money and don't look anywhere else, and then say, oh, Japan's got this unique culture of respect and social cohesion, and that's why we can't have any immigration, which is just a complete misrepresentation of the reality of the complexity of life in Japan, but also just uses Japan as a way to score points rather than having any actual concern about the quality of life in Japan, the challenges Japanese people are facing, etc. There's also even more commonly a bunch of, oh, wacky Japan kind of things that I really just detest. Where unique is used to make Japan seem weird or not like us and therefore not something we can learn anything from. Like when I was first learning Japanese, I remember hikikomori being presented as like this unique thing, but people that don't leave their houses and have trouble adjusting to society, that's causing problems everywhere right now. There was a British documentary called No Sex Please We're Japanese or something like that, which talked about, Japan's birth rates and presented these problems as unique ones, but look at the birth rates in Britain right now. The idea that we can't learn anything from these countries, that again, this is a first world capitalist nation with a high economy and global reach. And I feel like unique is used to pretend that we are isolated from that rather than recognizing that Japan is part of the world and one that we need to communicate with to better understand the world. Even on like the less harmful way, I have trouble with even presenting things like hone and tatemae as like these unique Japanese concepts because having thoughts that you keep to yourself, that are your honest thoughts, and then saying things for social cohesion is, in my opinion, not special to any country. The fact that Japanese has like a name for it is kind of cool. It's not like in the West we always say what we're thinking. That's just a pleasant myth that again is used to create difference when in reality I see way more similarities. On the other hand though, the second reason is an issue within Japan itself, where unique is often used to present Japan as different. Like different call is coming from inside the house. It's especially linked to the theory of Nihonjinron, which you may have heard of, which is like what translated as the theories of the Japanese people. This paper came out very recently, which is a very interesting read on it. But it's this idea that again, Japan is special, Japan is different, and therefore is separate from the rest of the world. On the harmless level, this results in ideas like Japan having 4 seasons being something special, or rather bizarre claims such as in this absolutely terrible book that I read last year, where there's a claim that Japanese people's names never start with an n sound because unlike in Africa where that happens, their hip bones are in a different place. No, I'm not lying, that's the argument that's made. On the more problematic end, of course, this sort of uniqueness is used to present Japan as superior and again result in sort of racist dialogues. So to bring this all back to pronouns, like is a pronoun pronounced ore that is linked to kind of a rough masculinity unique on the world? Yeah. Sure, I guess, but all pronouns are unique in that respect, and no one becomes like a scholar of ore. There's no such thing as oregaku. While the exact nuances of the Japanese pronoun system are I guess, unique, that's true of all pronoun systems. And what isn't unique is pronoun selection. And what is even less unique than that is word selection, changing the way you speak in order to communicate things about yourself, about the context, about how you feel to other people. And so I think that the study of Japanese language and the study of Japan is emphasized by, of course, highlighting how interesting Japan and Japanese is, but also not pretending that Japan is isolated from the rest of the world, but showing how much we can learn about fundamental things about who we are as people through studying Japan. In all my books and all my research, I make every single effort to, whenever possible, take the data that I have and the arguments I have that I've made from studying the Japanese context and show parallels in other languages or in other contexts to show how attention to Japan and attention to Japanese provide a really, really interesting locus for looking at things that are important to the rest of the world. And the word unique prevents me from doing that. As I mentioned, I particularly look at variation in the use of hiragana, katakana, and kanji, but in describing this, I've always linked it to things like Spitzmüller's work on the use of the heavy metal umlaut as a sort of social marker, or even how dialogues about Comic Sans in English, that I'm sure you've heard and participated in, are again linked to, not script, but the idea that the way something is written can be linked to a certain type of social identity. And I present Japan and Japanese as the best place for studying that, and of course the local manifestations of it are unique in and of themselves, but that's true with every data point. What's really interesting about that is what we can learn about something that is important to all of us and how we understand ourselves and how we communicate through language. Those are my issues with unique. At the best times when it's accurate to use it, it's kind of useless. And in the worst times, it's used to silo things off, when as researchers, we should be looking for things that help us learn about the entire world. To me, both Japan and Japanese are incredibly unique. I think they are more interesting than basically any other context, any other language on Earth. But my goal as a researcher is not only to preach to the choir. I want to show the importance of Japan, Japanese culture, Japanese language to researchers, to people on TikTok around the world. And to do that, I have to avoid the trap of saying, look how cool this is because it's unique, and move into the more complicated, more difficult, but more important argument of, look how special this is because it provides us with a lens for viewing something that is actually important to your life and not as distant from you as you may think. So there you go, that's my argument. If you disagree with me, that's fine. I'm sure it doesn't make you unique.